What's up YouTube? My name's David, and sitting on my bench in front of me is well over $100,000 of antique motorcycle engines. One of them is mine, the other two are not mine. They were sent to me today for a very specific reason, to play with, basically. Today's video is going to focus on this bad boy in the middle. This is a 1934 Harley-Davidson CAC engine, a 500cc Hemi head, screaming speedway single, and I'm very excited to dig into it to see exactly what's going on here. One thing I haven't told you yet is the fantastic story, some lore that is attached to this engine. Hopefully somewhere inside this thing we can find some dots that I can use to connect that lore to the reality of this hunk of metal that is sitting in front of me. So let's clear off the bench and give this beautiful piece of Harley-Davidson racing history some much deserved attention. As I said in the beginning, this is a 1934 Harley-Davidson CAC engine. The CAC is the most desirable and rarest and most expensive single-cylinder racer that any Harley collector could find. This is a rare, desirable piece from a rare, desirable bike. This is obviously a very special engine. However, to put it even further over the top, the story that goes with this engine in specific is that this is the prototype. Allegedly, Joe Petroli saw the JAP motors and their success they had on the speedways with their simple yet powerful design, and he basically copied the whole top end. It looks exactly like a JAP, I mean, come on. So my job today is to dig into this engine, take it apart carefully, and try to see if there's any indication inside that tells me that this might be the prototype. As awesome as this engine looks, there is one very glaring issue that I'll point out right away, and that is at some point in the life of this motor, the left side case was either damaged or exploded, and they replaced it with a recast new left side case. But it's not a showstopper. There are a lot of other things on this engine that can indicate if it's real and how early it might be. When you're working on a big project like this, it's so important to have an end goal to stick to from the start. Do you want to fully restore the piece? Do you want it shiny, brand new? Do you want it fully functional, fully rebuilt? Do you want it just cleaned and preserved? For this project, we're going for the cleaned and preserved option. I'm going to take it all apart, clean up the internals, inspect everything that's there, document it all, but not disturb any of the patina, the original patina that's on the outside. This is actually one of the hardest jobs you can give yourself, but that's why these engines came to me, because this is what I'm really good at. Wow, completely covered in old grease. Now this is telling me that this thing was probably put away, rebuilt, or barely used. But if you've ever taken apart an engine like this before, used, they look nasty. They're covered in black grease everywhere. This one is covered in grease, but it's pretty clean. It's really clean, actually. So I would say somebody rebuilt this or freshened it up, covered it in grease, and put it away. And it's been like this for probably 60 years, something like that. All right, let's dig into it further. So I'm seeing a couple of things. Obviously, right there is a very suspicious looking piece of damage. Hopefully not. But right here, you can barely see it, but I immediately saw it as an EX number, which you find all over larger pieces of Harley factory racing equipment, experimental, and then a chronologically sequenced number. Very cool, very legit stuff. I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. Cams are pretty straightforward. They just pull out. Oof, some wicked looking cams. High lift. Good shape. So there's a very unique feature of the CAC engine. It's small, but I really want to point it out because it's pretty exciting. Something to do with back pressure relief holes. So these little random holes right here, those are special, at least this one is. In a standard little pea shooter engine or a road model engine, you might have one relief hole in this cam chest, and a lot of you are probably wondering, what's that for? Well, when your piston is coming down in the cylinder, it is closing down that cavity. It's bringing air down, and there's back pressure in this confined space. It's bringing it down very quickly, and that pressure has to go somewhere or else it builds up. So they put in this little weep hole in the smaller road model engines to relieve some of the back pressure and to spray oil mist into this cam cavity. But they discovered that at higher RPMs, having a small hole actually limits your RPM range because there's too much back pressure happening too quickly. So they add another relief. Wait, Whoa, 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 wait a minute. There's more? Oh, wait, there's 3. Oh, that's really cool. I was going to show you this one relief hole, but there's actually 3. They added 3 big relief holes to relieve all that back pressure and to spray more oil mist into the cam chest. Wow, that's super cool. All right, let's keep digging into it. So very important restoration tip: if you've got something, a stud, that you need to hit to move something, you never hit the stud directly. You put the nut back on upside down, and then you take something flat but soft, and you hit it. Ta-da! Because sometimes, to take things apart, you have to damage something, but you don't want to damage the part. It's okay damaging something like this, though. An aluminum brick. We've got a pinion gear that we're definitely not going to pry off with a screwdriver. Hopefully this little gear puller works. This is a gear puller, by the way. A smaller one, definitely, but if it does the job, it does the job. Alright, so as you might be able to see right here, Harley used a special spanner nut for their crankcases, and you really need this tool if you're going to try to take any of them apart. It's not that expensive, but it's extremely necessary. As we dig deeper and deeper into this engine, I keep seeing more and more factory race only features. And one of them I'd like to point out now that's very special is the presence of a double roller bearing crankshaft. On all other Harley single cylinder engines, even the small factory race engines, the SAs and the S motors, Harley used a roller bearing setup on the left case and a bronze plain bushing on the right side case, or a plain bearing. This worked well, but for their big motors, the 500s, the CAs and the CACs, the webbed case racing singles, they opted for a double roller bearing setup. This takes a bit more precision while machining and line boring, however it allows for a higher RPM range. One of many special features on this engine, incorporated specifically to make it go really fast. Now let's take a look at this flywheel assembly. Oh my, it is stunning. First, wow, look at that connecting rod. That thing is giant. Wow. It's super thin in the middle and very wide. It's got these big I-beams on it. Whoa, no way. Oh, this is so crazy. This is an original CAC piston. Something I didn't even know existed, but it actually has EX part number inside the skirt of the piston. This is so cool. This is legit. This is even more legit than I thought it was going to be. These flywheels, Harley, Indian, everybody liked to use steel flywheels on their race engines because they were less prone to cracking than cast iron ones. And this one has been polished entirely for better oil flow, which is super cool. This is the end of your crank pin. Normally, I can't remember the size, 7/8. This is not 7/8. This is a huge crank pin for this huge connecting rod. Very interesting that they did that. It's a larger weight, but it also has a safer and better bearing surface. These are referred to as belly numbers or line bore numbers. When the cases are machined and sandwiched together like this, they are line bored, or a line board. And what that means is the two roller bearing or bushing or whatever bores in them are perfectly axially centered on one another. They would put the same number on each side of the crankcase to show that the workers, if they're ever taken apart again, that these two cases belong to each other because they were line bored together. Here are the lifters and lifter blocks for this engine. These are special as well. These are direct action roller lifters with a larger diameter stem compared to the smaller factory race engines and the road model engines. I assume they did this because the smaller stems wore really quickly inside the bushings, And also they hollowed out this stem really aggressively. They're actually quite light. And instead of a threaded in tappet, adjustable tappet on the end, they have a pressed in hardened steel cup because the adjusters for the tappets are in the rocker box on the rocker arms. Okay, time for the cylinder head. I'm actually pretty familiar with this section since I've got a top end myself and I've had mine all apart, so I kind of know what to expect here. Yeah, hindsight's 20/20, but this would have been easier if I did it before I took the top end off the engine. Can't win them all, I guess. Okay, so this is the cool part. This is a line board clamshell design with what, if it's the same as mine, has a ton, actually 88, needle roller bearings inside of here, 44 on each side. Fighting the whole way. There we go. There you have your roller rocker assembly. 88 needle roller bearings, 22 in each cage. Try to zoom in real quick. Yeah, my fingers are looking tasty by this point. But yeah, there you go. So at this point, I've got everything apart as far as I want to take it apart. I'm going to leave the rotating assembly together because the owner doesn't want it rebuilt. He's not going to run it. He just wants it disassembled and inspected to see what all is there. I am, however, going to clean everything internally and put new oil in it to preserve it properly. And that way it's not so gummy and you can actually turn it over by hand. So yeah, let's clean this stuff up. I have many different chemicals and cleaning solutions I like to use for different things. But for this application specifically, engine parts that are coated in old grease, I love using blue can oven cleaner. Yellow can also works, but it's extremely aggressive and will melt your sinuses, so just don't use it indoors. But blue can is great. That being said, notice how I'm avoiding spraying the oven cleaner on the outsides of the crankcases, areas that you can see once it's assembled, because I don't want to disturb that beautiful, grimy, original patina. Okay, check this out. Here's a cool secret restoration trick for when you have a straight slot screw head that is way wider than any screwdriver you have. To take this screw out, we aren't going to use any screwdriver. We're going to sort of make one. Thankfully, the slot is 1/8 inch wide, so we're just going to take some 1/8 inch thick plate steel, clamp it in the vise, and use that as a stationary screwdriver. Press down firmly on the part, spin it, break it free, and voila, problem solved. With all the internals cleaned and inspected, we're now ready to reassemble this engine. As I said earlier, we're not going to run this thing right away. However, in the near future, we're going to get it into a bike, and at that time, we will get it running. So in the meantime, we want this thing to stay nicely preserved and beautiful on the inside as it is now. So while I'm assembling it, I'm going to coat all of the internals, all the pieces, with brand new 60 weight motor oil. While I'm reassembling this engine, let's recap some of the unique features that make this thing so special. To start things off, of course, we have the double roller bearing crankshaft. This low friction assembly spins so smoothly, it allows the engine to accelerate quicker and reach higher RPMs than a standard plain bushing setup. Truly a high performance factory racing upgrade. Moving on, we have a giant 1-inch crank pin as opposed to a 7/8, which a standard pea shooter engine would have. We have this ridiculous connecting rod. It's super wide, but very thin in the middle. It's also polished. The flywheels are steel, as most racing flywheels are. They're polished as well for better oil flow. We have an original CAC piston with an EX part number in it. Of course, it's aluminum. It's a very high dome top, high squish, high compression piston. We have 3 large pressure relief holes drilled into the cam chest cavity to allow the oil spray and back pressure come from the bottom of the piston through the cam chest, shooting oil everywhere, I'm sure, as the engine's running at high RPM. Of course, we have these special webbed cases, which you only see on the factory racing 500cc single-cylinder engines, the CAs and the CACs, starting in 1930, I believe. These cases were specifically cast for the Keystone-style engine mount plates, as opposed to the horizontal pad-style engine mount that you saw on all the Pea-Shooter road model engines and some of the factory race engines as well. The Keystone-style plates were pretty much specifically used on the CAs and CAC double down tube speedway bikes. Moving on, we have these beautiful overhead valve style high lift cams mated to these extra special direct action roller lifters, which have been aggressively hollowed out for lighter reciprocating weight, but also have an extra large diameter shell for greater linear stability at high RPMs. The next high performance trick on this engine is absolutely wild. It's the cylinder bore. I didn't notice this until right before I assembled things, but somebody, maybe Joe Petralli in 1934, had the cylinder bore hard chromed and machine polished. It is absolutely beautiful. It is the most perfect smooth cylinder bore I've ever seen. It's not some repair somebody did back in the 50s or 60s before they put it away on a shelf. I can tell you this because there is a little bit of scoring and edge lip wear inside the bore, which means it was actually raced and run after the hard chroming and machine polish was done. Hard chroming and machine polishing like this is not something that your standard engine bench job repair guy is going to be able to do. This is something that I would expect of the Harley factory in the 1920s and 30s as chrome plating became more popular in that era, and it would take some high quality equipment to even make this job happen. So it very well could have been an experiment done by Joe Petralli, by the experimental department at Harley in that time frame. Bringing things up to the top end, we have a huge 2-inch exhaust port, and on this engine and this engine only, we have a very strange and interesting intake port that looks nothing like any of the intake ports on any of the other CACs out there. This is my logic on this piece. Maybe Harley saw the success of these sleeve valve British carburetors on the JAP engines, and they actually took the intake manifold fitting from a JAP to put this engine together, because that's exactly what it is. It is literally the intake manifold from a JAP engine. Moving on, of course, we have the 88 needle roller bearings inside of the line board clamshell style rocker box. Very cool setup. Nothing like it ever done before this or after this by Harley Davidson. It was probably so outlandishly expensive and time consuming to put these engines together right when the Great Depression hit that Harley said, we're never doing this ever again. As far as I'm aware, this is the only time Harley ever used needle roller bearings on their rocker shafts. Even the drive sprocket on this thing is special. This is an original and correct Speedway Racing compensating sprocket. This large nut on the end has a spring assembly underneath it that allows the drive sprocket to slip a little bit if there's too much torque applied on the crankshaft. Now the engine is finally reassembled. This is usually the part in the video where I show the engine running, spitting flames, all that fun stuff. However, we didn't get it running this time. I will get it running in the future once we get it in a bike, but we haven't gotten that far with it yet. So to make up for it, I'm going to include some footage of a real 1934 Harley-Davidson CAC running. This one is owned and raced by Billy Lane. He runs this at the Sons of Speed races. If you've never heard of that before, go check it out. It's this race circuit that Billy Lane puts on. I have a number of friends that race in this circuit using 100-plus-year-old motorcycles. It's insane what these guys are doing. It's insane the speeds they're driving. Can't believe it half the time. So cool. Go check it out. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want to see more like this. I've got so much more content like this coming in the future. So let me know what you want to see. Thank you very much. And until next time.